I just want to welcome you all for um, today's panel discussion for self-awareness, one of the four core values. So we have personal growth, um, now I'm self-awareness, reliability, and of course, camaraderie and fellowship. So usually we have a video that would share with you, then you can interact. But right now it's a little bit different since we have Garrick, Eli, and Miguel. So the first thing that I'd like to ask, and either of them can answer, um, to the three of you, how one of the questions we have is how do you understand self-awareness in the context of being a leader? Does that have a big difference if you're with people who are not part of the company? I'll also post the question in our chat box.
I feel like we should set the Zoom thing where it has like everyone is ordered up into like a stage or something. I think that's a Zoom setting, but
Oh
I have no idea how to do it. It's just funny of like we're in a panel, but I can see Miguel and Eli and stuff. Um, I can be the first one to comment on this. I think that
Hey, before you jump in, is it okay
yeah,
if I say something real quick?
yeah, feel free.
Just for context, guys, I wanted to share like the idea of why we decided to do this, just kind of to mix it up and have a different type of conversation about one of our core values. And panel discussions can be really interesting sometimes because you get this kind of back and forth conversation. But I just wanted to throw out there that if anyone outside the three of us, like we were in a meeting together and we're like, hey, we'll volunteer. We can talk about this topic. But if anyone else has something that you really want to share, like on one of these questions or based off of something that Garrick or Miguel or I say, like just chime in the chat box and we'll bring you straight into the conversation. So it's like you're actually, if you're interested for that. Is that okay if I kind of ad hoc throw that out there? You guys?
yes, yes.
Right. Okay. So just wanted to say it's not like us being the experts on self-awareness and then the audience. It's just us volunteering to answer the questions. So you guys can also ask stuff in chat if you have comments, but if you want to talk, then just say, raise your hand or whatever. Okay, Garrick, go. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that, and I want to say thank you for Jardine for volunteering to host this out, and I'm excited for the discussion today. So we hope that you guys enjoy this experiment. But to give the thought about self-awareness in the context of leadership, I would say that a lot of self-awareness in my mind, and I'd be curious what Miguel and Eli's thoughts are on this, but I don't think too many concepts in self-awareness really change from context to context. You want to be aware of who you are with your family. You want to be aware of who you are when you're by yourself talking to yourself. You want to be aware of yourself in a leadership role. I would say the one interesting nuance of self-awareness that I try to remind myself of often is that in a leadership role, the culture is often trickled down. Is that if there's people who are not sure how to behave, they look to the leaders, and that sets the pace, sets the tone of the overall organization. And so I think that self-awareness is kind of extra interesting as as a leader, because very often I think it's easy to trick myself into thinking that I'm behaving one way or a different way. And I realize that if I see other people behaving in one way, I can pretty rapidly tell like, oh, I've influenced that. I've people are reflecting back to me what I am. And so that's how I think about self-awareness in the context of leadership. That's my comment. Otherwise, I think it's pretty similar across different venues. What do you guys think, Miguel and Eli?
Oh, okay, there's a pause. I didn't know if Eli wanted to speak first, but after 5 seconds, it's clear that I'll go first. So
Champion.
yeah, some self-awareness there. And I don't know, like this is actually my first experience of like being quote unquote leader, or just being one of the first, and not one of the first people in the company, but just in the client success team. I've had a couple of teammates that have came and went, and it's interesting to see different personalities. And if I look back, it's like self-awareness is a very interesting thing, because we're not really dealing with robots. Like if you're dealing with an AI, sure, you don't need self-awareness. You probably have to be using your logical brain for that. But when you're dealing with people, or like self-awareness in general, you actually have to pace yourself. Like you're always coming in as a blank slate. Like, oh, you talk to some, of course there's an agenda. You want to make the best out of the meeting. However, when you meet the person, there could be a million things going on in their life. Like they could have had a bad day, or their best friend is, just suffered a loss, and they were grieving with them. And it's just very interesting, because anything can be thrown into the mix. And self-awareness really gives you that humility, and you start together. Like there's no hierarchy. See, that's the thing. Like if you are a leader, sometimes there's this notion of like, oh no, like you listen to me and I'm just going to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of you. But having that self-awareness is like you talk, and then you see if the person is on the same page. Like, are they on the same wavelength or vibration? So if not, then you can go off on a tangent for a while and like ask like, is everything okay? And then you're actually in touch with the conversation, and not just with the conversation, but with the actual reality, like the whole package of the scene. Because every day or every part of the day can be different. So yeah, that's how I view how I answer that specific question about self-awareness. Yeah, Eli, do you want to share your take on this?
The second part of the question, I don't know if I quite understand. So I think I'm going to set that one aside and just answer the first one. The self-awareness, from my experience, is a kind of like a muscle that when we set the intention to raise the consistency of being aware of what we're thinking, why we're doing what we're doing, how other people are perceiving us, just like all the data in any given moment that makes up kind of who you are and how you're being in that moment. It's very easy to go through life with a low level of self-awareness. You're just sort of reacting. You're just, you're feeling the way you're feeling, but you're not really analyzing it very much. So I remember kind of intentionally starting to build this muscle, and it felt kind of like the analogy for me would be creating a drone in my mind that's looking down on me all the time. And like, how often am I noticing myself through the lens of that drone, and how often am I forgetting to do that? And then I'm just kind of like just failing to pay any attention. So I think first you need to be developing that muscle of self-awareness, and you can't, there's no such thing of, you can't have self-awareness as a leader if you don't have it already. It's like, it's got to be something you got to build. You got to build like this habit of just paying attention and tuning in and asking questions about, who do I want to be in this moment? Who am I being in this moment? Why am I thinking and behaving? What's my motive? What's my, what am I feeling right now? And where did those ideas come from? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you're just always kind of analyzing yourself, being as aware as you can. So in the context of being a leader, I guess one of the things I would say would be trying to remember to ask yourself, who do I want to be in this moment? Like, what's the best way to be in this moment, and being, not just being aware, but also having a goal or an intention. So maybe, let's see. There are times when the most important version of me that I can be in a certain conversation, like let's say I know somebody's really struggling emotionally, they're dealing with something very confusing. This has happened with Jardine a lot of times, where she's had very amazingly deep questions that she needed to think through. And we got coffee, and she's been kind of emotionally struggling with something because she's trying to wrap her mind around these two different concepts that seem opposite. Like, how do we take care of people and take care of the business? And, just stuff like that. That's way oversimplifying it. But, in that moment, I need to be a really good listener. I need to be able to receive her energy. I need to slowly think through it and help her probably walk through some meta principles before talking about what to do about it. It's like it's really unpacking something complex. And the energy that I would bring to that meeting would be very, very different. The energy that's ideal in that meeting is very, very different than one where we're just trying to make a decision on something, where I just need to be analytical and I need to be pretty fast at sort of helping people come to the right conclusion. So I think self-awareness in the context of being a leader is paying attention to what's the most important version of you that you need to show up as in that context. Do I need to be the empath first and then, the philosopher next, or do I need to be the logical decision maker in this moment? Something like that, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes perfect sense. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this question, Eli, Miguel, and Garrick. And if I may add, the way that I have experienced these people with regards their level of self-awareness that has helped me and a lot of people, like so many times, I've observed that I'd like to echo what Eli said, that they are self-aware first, like within themselves, and whatever it is that they're doing as a leader, they're just emanating it, they're just exuding. That's why it's easier for us to receive and it's easier for us to replicate. And that's one of the things that I highly appreciate with these three people. And I've cried in front of these people. Garrick, Miguel, even sometimes late at night, we'd have very serious talks. If I could disclose a little bit of detail, there was even a time that I feel like I just want to give up on everything already, and I just called Miguel, and he's in Amsterdam, but he was very ready to receive my energy and really try to think it through. So I really appreciate how these people really look at this core value and just share it with the rest of us. So thank you again for that. Oh, lovely. I have a question here from AJ. Thank you for your question, AJ. Top 3 words that describe a self-aware person for you. Nice. Top 3 words that describe a self-aware person to you. So anyone who'd like to go first?
I was like, no, I can't use aware. And tuned in is hyphenated and just means aware.
I want to give one comment on there's a quote, because I don't really have any thoughts that come to mind. Maybe I'd just be stealing, aware, or stealing like Eli's point of like being present and humble and stuff. But there is one thing I want to say here that I think is kind of unique, or one word that has unique relationship to it, which is humble. And I think that humble is one of the hardest words, in my opinion, like in English, like to really define them, like matters a lot, because like wisdom and humility are like 2 of the hardest words to define that are like really helpful if you nail it down. And I think that humility is not about thinking less of yourself or thinking that you're the underdog, or really thinking about like, hey, I'm not the leader. It's not really about creating a small self-image. It's a Lewis Clark quote of, it's not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking about yourself less. And so there's another great quote by Simone Wheels, which is, on the intellectual order, humility has no more or less value than just paid attention. And so both of those quotes, the idea is that you're less distracted by who you think you are in that moment, and you're more just focusing on what is the data around you. how do you feel emotionally on your insides? Like how are your organs and the energy movement inside your body? That's data. How is the people around you interacting with you? That's data. How are you responding? That's data. But it's not trying to too quickly put it into a narrative of I am being wronged, or I am being a victor right now, or I am being this or that. It's about not jumping to a certain narrative too quickly. And so I think that as a definition of humility is more helpful than thinking of just a small self-image. And I would definitely agree that I don't know what my other two words would be. Present's really good too, but I would definitely say agree with humble. And I thank you, Eli, for putting that in. So that's my comments there.
I'll just share mine real quick before we answer Neil. So mine is just being, investigate, and listen. So like if you have being, you're there and you just be yourself. Because when you approach someone and then you're already like you want to get your point across already, like just be there and let the person settle first, and then you start to investigate and stop asking them like why. They'll just be defensive. Listen, like ask like how questions and like what do you feel or something, because once you start asking people their intentions, it maybe you can ask that when they're pretty comfortable with the conversation, but first just settle down, let the person breathe, and then listening is the best for me, because it's just you can never know if you don't listen enough. Okay, we need more time for the other questions, so I'll shut up.
One thing that I'd also love to echo with what Miguel said when he mentioned be there for the person, be present. And I love how Garrick also mentioned being humble, not really thinking like less of yourself, but thinking about yourself less. And it becomes a better perspective for us to look into. So thank you so much for sharing that. And just to reiterate, Eli mentioned the top 3 words for him would be present, humble, and open, to which Garrick really agreed on being humble, and with Miguel being present. Right. Anything you'd like to add, Eli, before we go to the next question?
I just shared a link to a podcast with Adam Grant where he described humility in an interesting way. If I remember it correctly, humility is knowing what you're good at. So in agreement with what Garrick is saying, it's not thinking lowly of yourself. That's what people mistake humility to mean. It's knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not good at, and going to work on what you're not good at, or knowing what your strengths, your weaknesses, and focusing on improving your weaknesses.
I just want to answer Rodelin's questions, like how do you handle criticism as a leader with regards to not being aware sometimes?
Let's let the moderator choose the questions, I think.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No worries. That's a very interesting question.
I wasn't somewhere enough.
No worries, but definitely we will definitely take time to answer Rodelin's question. That's a very awesome question. But before that, there is one question that Neil posted. This one is also very interesting. His question is, in the perspective of me as a subordinate to a leader, how do I politely bring up something like, hey, sorry, I received your words as rude. Can I ask if you're doing okay, or did you have lunch already?
Is that your suggestion, Neil, of how to say it without being rude?
No, just a random thought. So yeah, maybe
No,
you
no,
guys
no. I really like this question where it's going, because I think so one of the reasons that we chose self-awareness as one of our core values is not just about each individual person working to increase your personal, internal, self-analytical habits, right? Not just that, because self-awareness can be divided into 2 different categories, which is one, you guys maybe remember us talking about this before: internal and external self-awareness. And external self-awareness has another code word, which is feedback. It's like, if you're not getting data from other people, you're never going to know so much about yourself, because you can never see it from other people's perspectives. Never. It doesn't matter how good you get at self-evaluation and self, analyzation, whatever. You can't see everything. So absolutely critical. It's absolutely critical that if you want to keep improving yourself, that you're getting honest data from other people. And this is it's a huge challenge because people aren't generally comfortable and or haven't built the skill of knowing how to tell other people the truth that they need to hear. So we go through life avoiding this stuff a lot, right? And this is actually probably the most important part of self-awareness for having it as a company value, is realizing that what we're talking about here is being willing to tell us to put the energy into telling other people what we're seeing that we think they need to know. And this happens all the time. Like I see things all the time. People see things in me all the time. And like, how much energy are you going to put into making sure that it's communicated? So I don't think we have time to touch on the subordinate thing, because I would actually argue that you're not a subordinate to anyone, but different conversation for another day. I would say to you, Neil, that I would ultra challenge you and everyone else that if you feel like somebody could really use some feedback and that you would like them to know how something made you feel, that you owe it to them as a gift, if you care, to find a good way to say it and a good time. And I think there's many different ways to do it. But not doing it is the worst, because you're just holding back that gift. You're not giving them the information that they need. So I would love it if that was me. You could send me a video or an audio clip. You could call me. We could have a meeting. You could, whatever you want to do. But I would really love it if you would say, hey, just if it's okay with you, I just wanted to make you aware. You can do something with this information or not, take it or leave it. I just wanted to make you aware that the other day when you said this or that, the way it made me feel was this and that. And, it's up to you if you want to change something or not. I'm not asking you to, but I just wanted you to know. So you just share it. Just let people take it or not. That's what I would say. And I would also recommend join Toastmasters, because it's a really good way to practice giving evaluation. Bernard evaluated his first speech the other day, and you have to give feedback to other people that's honest and helpful in front of others. And it's a really good way to practice getting comfortable and getting better at giving people honest feedback. I'll stop there. What do you guys think? Garrick, Miguel, any thoughts on this?
That was amazing, Eli. Like the part that I really like is like, it's impossible to be self-aware enough if you don't even consider listening to other people or like their feedback, because clearly there's something to see there. And if their feedback is just BS, then it's easy to discard. However, if it might be true, then once it sounds like a threat or it seems like a threat, there's like 99% chance that it could be true. So beware of that. Like if you're mad at something, or if something triggers you, there's a huge chance that it could be true. And there's something to discover there. So yeah, that's it.
The feeling that we get when we hear something potentially negative about ourselves, regardless of whether we think it's true or not, is a fear that other people are dissatisfied with us. It's a fear of other people's opinions being low, or maybe somebody thinks lowly of me, and we just instantly feel defensive, right? You guys all know what that feeling feels like. It is something you can eventually mostly get over. And one of the ways that I've done this mostly, like I almost never feel that anymore. People could tell me anything they want. They could yell at me, cuss at me, tell me that they think I suck at this or I suck at that. And like every once in a while, certain people will say things to me, and I'm like, I get this, that real quick little feeling of defensiveness, but it's way, way, way less than before. And a couple of the ways that I've gotten over it, one is just starting with realizing like I want to improve always, and I need data from other people. There's no way I can keep growing if I don't get data from other people. And I hate it when I tell somebody something I think they could work on and they respond with some kind of, it sounds defensive if you just respond with anything that starts explaining. So if you respond with an explanation about why you did this and why you did that, like it already sounds like defensiveness. So I've just made a commitment to myself, is like, try to remember anytime I get feedback from anyone, say thank you. I'm going to really think about what you just told me and try to find what I can take from that. And then the second huge part is deep thinking about the process of receiving feedback being my job to filter. It's my job to filter, and I'm going to filter feedback based on the credibility of the party. So if somebody really knows me, they know the situation, and they're an expert on that thing that they're telling me, or enough expertise that I really believe that they're giving me some valuable data, then I'm going to really prioritize that information over somebody who just didn't like the way I looked when they saw me. They didn't like the look on my face when they saw me for 2 seconds, and they don't even know me. And like, okay, well, I know I need to smile more, but I'm not going to really worry about that too much because there's just this little tiny data slice. Or that's a bad example, but you can't take all feedback overly seriously. Sometimes you just have to say, you know what, that one isn't, I'm not going to use that one. That one, I don't think it's coming from a credible party. Maybe this person doesn't even care about me. They don't really have my best interest at heart. They're not trying to make me better. They're just trying to criticize me, whatever it is. Like if you, as long as you're not deflecting feedback and ignoring it because you don't like the way it feels, right? Because then you're just potentially ignoring useful data. But if you work on that filter and you start to trust yourself that you can do that, you're like, okay, I can just like receive it. So it all goes in this big inbox, and then I just decide what am I going to do with it. And you realize like that's your job, and you start getting better at it. It's like, well, then why would I ever not want something to go in the inbox? Like, it's just up to me what I do with it, right? It's not an instant jab. It's not an instant arrow in my back. It's just data. And I want more data from more people always. And so I've just been, kind of practicing that philosophy. And now I'm very desirous of feedback. So if anybody ever has anything you think that I'm, that bothers you, like, I would really love to hear it. It's not going to hurt my feelings. It's not going to offend me, because we all just have perceptions of each other all the time, right? So I would really recommend that thinking is like, think about the fact that it's your job to filter. And then if you get better at that, you just want more data. It just makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Eli. That's very insightful. And I think that's one of the things that not only we can look up to, but something that we could also replicate. All right. Awesome. So Neil, I hope that answers your questions. And I love what Eli said. And just to echo it back, you are not a subordinate, my dear. Okay. You're amazing, and you'll always be amazing. All right. So we have another question. This one is from Camille. I love your question, dear. Is self-awareness directly proportional to maturity? Or can you think of an outside variable that affects one's self-awareness? Thank you for that question, dear. Who wants to answer?
Yeah, I can go first. First part of the sentence, is self-awareness directly proportional to maturity? I would say yes, absolutely, because that also really depends what you mean by maturity. But in my dictionary, I would say, yeah, it is directly proportional, because when you're mature enough, it's not like, well, you see your blind spots, and it's not like you'll never repeat them again. It's just like, oh, there's a chance that there's something I don't know. And if you're open to data, if you're open to feedback, then that you've missed, that is a blind spot, and then there could potentially be more blind spots. And for the second, it's also related to maturity. Is like what Eli said. You have to have a big inbox, and then also consider the credibility of the people who are giving feedback. I think that's a really core concept. And once you have that, there will be things that seem off, like the feedback isn't really in alignment with the reality. And it's easy to flag that, because once you're self-aware, you recognize these things easier. And it also is highly proportional to maturity. And maturity is just, I think it's a very close word to self-awareness, where when you commit a mistake, you acknowledge it. And then before others even recognize that you made a mistake, you already tell them like, oh, I messed up. And it's just a really huge thing. Even it's not about being perfect. It's about recognizing that there are always room for mistakes, and being able to admit them just increases people's trust in you.
I would say, without I'll just make this as fast as I can because I think we're eating up time really fast here on this topic, and it's a fun conversation, but talking takes lots of time. Maturity for me is a challenging word, like what you're saying. It's not clear what it means, but for me, the fastest definition I would say for maturity is, where are you on your journey of personal growth? And so the further on your path of, on the journey of personal growth you are, maybe that means you're more mature, but it's a very nebulous and subjective word. But I would say that self-awareness leads to maturity, because the more accurately you can see yourself, the more you understand yourself, the faster you're going to be able to grow. So I think it's maybe definitely correlated, because self-awareness probably just leads to growth. And the other thing I would say on the second part of the question is that, yes, outside variables, so triggers, if something triggers the fear center of your brain and throws you into a state of mind that doesn't allow your neocortex to really think, kind of be in control, then your ability to see yourself will plummet. When you're angry, when you're hungry, whatever it is, whatever that state of being is, where your amygdala or other parts of your brain are really taking over, your clarity of self perspective is going to very much drop. So knowing that is important.
I'll
Eric,
add
do you have any
one.
thoughts? Yeah.
I'll add one thought to what Miguel said. Is I really did love Miguel's answer and how he said, according to my dictionary, my definition of maturity, and it's directly proportional, and that's just what a lot of this stuff boils down to, of how we define a lot of these terms. And I would say, my own definition of maturity, it's not directly proportional. There are other factors. I think maybe one of the biggest factors, to go back to Eli's previous comment of how you see yourself as a subordinate, how you see yourself in relationship with other people should be in a horizontal relationship. And part of that means forming, to me, in my mind, one-on-one relationships with other people to get permission to receive feedback, to say, hey, I want feedback from you. If you give me feedback, this is how I want to respond. And also asking the other person, do I have your permission to give you feedback? And the thing is, even if they have no idea what you're talking about, when they just commit to oh no, I would love to receive feedback too, because of course that's the thing that we all would like ourselves to say. So then we say it, and then when we receive feedback, that part of our brain that gets annoyed, we say to ourselves, oh, that's not true. But when we remember, oh, gee, I told this person I would receive feedback this way, and therefore you have to live up to it. So that, in my mind, is something that is totally not related to maturity at all. You can be the most immature asshole, but in that moment, no, wait, I committed, and you have that commitment and consistency. So that's not related to maturity, but is a factor that comes into it. And so, but it really just boils down to definition of terms and
well, and
I'm
that's
rambling now. So
I mean that, and I would also say that I agree with that very much, and that's a great reminder and point that we should practice establishing that kind of agreement with anyone in our life, anyone that you can. The more you do that, the more you get both directions. Hey, I really want to hear what you see truthfully, and you can tell me straight, and you won't hurt my feelings. If people test you on that, you better live up to it, or you're not going to get any more data. Because if you make them feel uncomfortable and defensive, and you're defensive when they do what you asked, they're not going to do it anymore. So you have to be serious about it and go for it. But I don't know if that's establishing an agreement for two-way or one-way feedback. Maybe that's not internal self-awareness, that's external self-awareness. And you're trying to build external self-awareness by getting more flow of data from other people. I think what Miguel and I were talking about with maturity, or at least the way we tried to answer the question, is more on the building the muscle of having the internal self-awareness, maybe, which is where I think it really helps with leading to growth.
Awesome.
Separate, I don't know, just my perspective.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of those insights with us, you guys. And Camille, I hope that answers your questions. And for those who can relate to Camille's questions, I hope that's you got some very important nuggets. And then I noticed that Rodelyn asked a similar question when she said, how do you handle criticism as a leader with regards to not being aware sometimes? So, Rodelyn, do you feel that your question has been addressed similarly, or is there any other question that you'd like to follow up with our panelists?
I would just answer that really quickly by saying ideally you handle all criticism as data, like what I was saying earlier. So hopefully being able to build the ability to, if you are triggered by the criticism, which is really just data, not, working on not being reactive and giving yourself time to think it through and run it through that filter and say, why is this person saying this? What do I not understand about their perspective? Do I want to dig deeper and learn where they really got this? Where did they start? Why did they start feeling this way? What made them? What did they notice? So hearing it as criticism is probably a mistake, because what it is just their perspective. And if it sounds like criticism, it might just be that they aren't that good at delivering it yet, or you just don't understand it that well. So if you're curious and you're like, maybe there's something here I want to use, then just calmly responding by saying, okay, thank you for sharing that with me. Can you tell me a little bit more? Like, give me some examples of where this came up and what made you start, noticing this thing with me. And then the more you dig into it, the more you're like, oh, of course, that's the way that. So I just was a misunderstanding, or I came across the wrong way, or whatever it is. And then you just take it as data and you decide if you're going to change something.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Eli. Right. And I noticed that we have such a very good conversation regarding our core value, self-awareness. I hope you guys are learning a lot from this. And we have 5 more minutes to spare. I just have one more question to ask. Yes, Arnel raised his hand. Yes, dear.
All right. So I think I'm gonna ask this mostly to Eli. So in terms of feedback, does language is language relevant to helping in self-awareness, especially on the feedback, because you're accepting all of this data and then you try to synthesize with those data, and then I was thinking that you have to be careful on how you construct that feedback, how you process that, because sometimes it might lead to self-doubt. And so the way you tell yourself that rather than being I'm not good at this, but then you reconstruct it something like somebody told me I'm not good at this, and then so I'm just gonna take it like it's something that I have to improve on, make me feel inspired, something like that. What do you think about that?
100%. That's what the whole book Mindset by Carol Dweck is kind of built off of, is when children found out that they weren't doing well at something yet, they either responded by saying, oh, no big deal, I'll just work on it and get better, or they felt bad about themselves and went away from that thing and didn't do it anymore and decided they were bad at it. So it's all about that. When it comes to receiving data, you're not going to be able to get good at comfortable receiving and filtering and then applying data that you're getting from other people. You're never going to get good at that if you're constantly hearing any data about something you're not good at as meaning you're not worthy. Like if it goes straight to your self-worth and it lowers your view of yourself intrinsically, like you're fucked. Like honestly, that's the worst situation, because then how can you make mistakes, and how can you learn? Like how can you practice anything if you think every time you mess up or don't get something perfectly right that it means you suck? You're just that. So yes, you have to really start with contemplating the value of the growth mindset, so that you really want the data so that you can improve, because you believe that everything is improvable and that you are clay. Yeah, that's critical. Believing you are clay and that you can be the sculptor is the most preeminent philosophy behind wanting feedback. That's a great point.
Right. Thank you for that, Eli. And I love the clay and the sculpture metaphor. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that amazing question, Arnel. And thank you guys for addressing our concerns and curiosity about this core value. We have 2 minutes left, and I just wanted to ask this question to you guys. If you have like a very fast answer, or if you'd like to also share it with us in other channels such as Discord or Vidyard, that would be so awesome. So last question would be, what are some of the tips you'd like to share with us to enhance our self-awareness?
Give really fast ones of just to ask feedback is the biggest one, but we've talked about that already a lot. So I just say journal and expose yourself to other people's ideas, because it's almost impossible to be self-aware when two fish are swimming down the ocean, and one fish turns to the other and says, "Hey, how's the water today?" The other fish says, "What the hell is water?" Like you can't be self-aware if it's the only thing you've ever been exposed to. So get exposed to more people's ideas. So journal on that.
Awesome.
I
Thank
think
you.
that's really good. One other quick tip I would say is use your emotions to help tune into your emotions. Like emotions will be sending you signals, especially negative ones will be sending you signals of things to pay attention to, and just tuning in. You got to pay attention, because it's very easy to go through life and not be listening to what's going on in your inner narrative, and not be paying attention to what your emotions are trying to teach you. And that's, I think, a really great place to start.
Yeah, my
Wonderful. Yes.
second answer for this question would just be something you would expect from me would be like, oh, go meditate or go do something internal. But I would actually start externally here. Just a commitment to the truth can change everything. No, really, like even the smallest things. If your friend asks you, where are you? Tell them exactly where you are. Don't try to massage the situation or make it feel like you're somewhere else. But like really, if you commit to telling the truth, if you need more time for a project, just say it. If you're late, don't try to blame it on the traffic. If you left late, just tell them that you're late because you moved slower or you just chose to press snooze that day. And if you start there, you get that sense of self-respect. Then you can start to introspect and really see, have a better view of your own thoughts and emotions. Because if you do the introspection first and you still don't commit the truth, you still lie to other people, then it's going to be very steep from there. So that's it.
Awesome. I love that. I love all of your insights and the tips that you're sharing with us. I hope you guys learned a thing or two, or 100 thing or two. That's amazing. I would say that this panel discussion is very, very insightful and helpful. I hope you I hope you feel the same way. So for our next core value sharing, we might be looking into using the same format or not. Let's see how it goes. But thank you again, Eli, Garrick, and Miguel. You guys are so awesome, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your hearts with us.